Let's be honest, all the scores. I used to work for WNBC Afternoons on NBC Radio, and I thought the station was happy. Howard Stern used to be the most popular shock radio host. They are loud, brave, and always pushing the limits. He made a fortune by saying things that no one else would. A lot of people watched every day waiting for his next crazy guest or bold opinion. He was famous, rich, and couldn't be stopped. Howard's life now at age 80 is very different from what you'd expect. It's no longer there. The crowd is quiet, and it's not the fame that stays behind closed doors. For me, it's the emotions, being alone, and health scares. Let's take a look at Howard Stern's life today and see how things have changed. A boy who wants to do great things. Howard Stern was born in Jackson Heights, Queens, New York, on January 12, 1954. Ben and Ray Stern had 2 children. He was their second child. Both were Jewish and had roots in Poland and Austria-Hungary. Ben was his dad. He was in the U.S. Army during the war and then worked as a radio engineer afterward. He even owned a recording studio with someone else in Manhattan. Ray, his mother, used to work as a clerk and then became a stay-at-home mom. After a while, she also worked as a breathing therapist. Ellen, Howard's sister, was very quiet, which was different from him. Howard was only 1 year old when his family moved to Roosevelt, Long Island in 1955. The first school he went to was Washington Rose Elementary, and the second was Roosevelt Junior Senior High. That's where he got the name TZVI, which means light. Howard stood out even when he was a kid. He played the piano and loved putting on puppet shows with marionettes for 5 years. But these weren't any old shows. He made them silly and funny. He even got together with 2 friends to make a band called the Electric Comic Book. He sang and played the keyboard in that band. He went to Camp Wilmette every summer from the time he was 9 years old until his second year of college. He worked in the kitchen as a camper and then as a helper. He once said that the years he spent at camp were the best of his life. What changed Howard's life, though, was seeing his dad work. I fell in love with my dad when I saw him work as a recording engineer. Howard said he liked how much respect people had for his dad, and hoped that if I could get a microphone he could see me with that same respect. That's when Howard's dream began. A room in the basement and a young man's thoughts. Howard used to want to be on the radio when he was 5 years old. Back then he didn't listen to the radio very often, but he admired Bob Grant and Brattle. Early on his dad helped him. The mic, tape machine, and player were set up in their basement to make a small studio. Howard began to act like he had his own show there. He put people, jokes, prank calls, and ads on those fake broadcasts. He made it all up. He went to his dad's real recording studio too. Voice artists like Don Adams and Larry Storch were working on cartoons like Tennessee Tuxedo, which caught his attention. It made Howard want to do more than just play music after seeing them work. He wished to bring you a real show with real talk. In the late 1960s, Roosevelt's neighborhood went through some changes. Howard remembered being one of the few white students who were still there when it got mostly black. He was picked on, which made him feel alone. When he was 15, his family moved again, this time to Rockville Center. When he moved to Southside High School, he became very shy. He got his diploma in. So far as his yearbook shows, he only joined the Key Club as one of many school activities. But he had bigger plans in mind. The start was rough, but then the mic broke through. Howard had the chance to go to Elmira College, but he turned it down. But he chose to study communications at Boston University instead. Because he didn't get good grades in high school, he had to go through the basic studies program for 2 years before he could go to the School of Public Relations. He joined the college radio station WTBU in his second year. He played music, read the news, and did talks there. He also made a humor show called the King Schmaltz Bagel Hour every week with 3 friends. The show ended quickly. It was canceled during its first show because of a sketch called Godzilla Goes to Harlem that caused a lot of controversy. Howard tried drugs like LSD, weed, and cocaine while he was in college, but after having a bad time with LSD, he stopped. He finally got into the School of Public Communications in 19. He went to a school in Virginia the following year to get his radio license. Anyone who wanted to work in radio had to get this license from the government. Doors started to open once he had it. In August 1975, he got his first real radio job at WTN in Newton, Massachusetts. He worked in production, read the news, and worked on air shifts, among other things. After that, he taught other people how to pass their own radio license tests for 5 months. Howard passed magna cum laude with a 3.8 GPA in May 9. He got a major in film and television and a minor in English and speech. After many years, he even paid for a grant at his college. Working hard and thinking big while starting small, Howard went on the job market for radio work after high school. His first job came at WRNW, a small progressive rock station in Briarcliff Manor, New York. At first he was nervous and unsure, and he even wondered if he was good enough. He worked for a short time at an ad business in New York, but not for long. In just 3 hours he quit one job and was fired from another. He tried to sell radio ads in Queens next, but he wasn't very good at it. He called WNW again with the help of his mom and partner. In 1976 they gave him some holiday work. He did well and was hired full-time. He works 6 days a week and gets paid $96. He was eventually made production director and then program director, a job that paid $250 a week. He lived in a monastery in Arank, New York to save money. In 1979 he saw an ad from CT radio station WCCC which played rock music. There was a need for a crazy and fun morning guy. Howard took the test to show how fun he is. It got sound effects and jokes from him. He got the job, but it was hard. He had to be on air for 4 hours and then do commercials for 4 more hours. It was even worse on Saturdays, 6 hours on air, and then 3 more hours of setup. Still, he didn't say anything bad. He loved being the host of a talk show on Sunday mornings more than anything else. Howard once said, "It was more than anything else what I wanted to do on the radio, break down what the average guy does." During the energy crisis of 1979, he even told his fans to go without Shell oil for 2 days. The neighborhood news took notice of that move. In WCCC he met Fred Norris, who was the DJ for the night. Howard would go on to work with Fred for decades and become one of his closest friends. Howard did leave WCCC though, in early 1980. They said no to his request for a $25 raise. At the same time, WHCN wanted him to leave Hartford. They got tapes of Howard's shows and sent them to a marketing firm to try to get Howard to leave the market. That's how he got another offer, from an Ohio station in Columbus. Howard said no though. He now knew how much he was worth, and this was just the start. Dreams for Detroit and its first big wins. In radio and music, Howard Stern saw an ad for a full-time job. He was still trying to become a radio host. It was a morning show job at a Detroit rock station called Babu Abu. Doug, an expert on radio, told Howard to wait for a better deal, but Howard took the job anyway. He began on April 22, 1980. Howard was ready to take chances at this point. He wanted to get rid of his ego and be fully honest on air. He wanted to break down all the barriers and be honest. He said that method worked. He won the Album-Oriented Rock Personality of the Year award in a big market from Billboard. He also came in first place in a talent search. But the station was still having trouble, even though he was doing well personally. Ratings were not good, and Howard was caught off guard when the station quickly switched from rock to country in January 1981. He was shocked and upset. He joked that he couldn't picture himself as Hopalong Howie and only stayed for 2 more weeks. He turned down jobs at stations in Chicago and Toronto because he wanted a better job. He didn't have to wait long. Washington, D.C. was the real turning point. Douglas helped Howard find his next chance. Howard began on March 22, 1981 at WWDC, a rock station in Washington, D.C. It was a morning show. He was careful at first. The boss didn't fully understand what he did on TV. Howard still took the job though. He thought this was his best chance to one day go to New York. He planned things out slowly. He meant for my rival to die. Also, he said he thought it was time to put together a team. During news and current events, he needed someone to talk his thoughts over with. That's how Robin Quivers got there. She used to work as a nurse and a reporter for the news. She agreed to work for the station after hearing Howard interview a prostitute on tape. She had not even met Howard yet. It wasn't what Robin thought it would be, just reading the news. She later said that they hit it off right away. They laughed around, made fun of each other, and brought life to radio. The people in charge weren't always happy, of course. Some of the jokes or topics annoyed them, so they added a 7-second pause to get rid of anything dangerous. But Howard didn't give up. He built the show he'd always dreamed of slowly. He hired Fred Norris, an old friend, to write and produce the show. Howard even talked about his wife's miscarriage live on air at one point. People paid attention even though it was raw and shocking. In January 1982, his morning show was the second most popular in the whole city. It's great to meet you in New York. People in Washington were interested in Howard's rise. Howard wanted a longer deal, but WWDC only offered to extend his contract for 1 year. Near the same time, UNBC in New York gave him a $1 million deal for 5 years. It was really cool. That was finally my chance to work in New York. This was my dream come true, I believed. What he really meant was, welcome to my worst nightmare, which I didn't know at the time. Howard signed the WNBC deal in March 1982, a few months before the end of his deal with WWDC. His relationship with WWDC got worse after that. On air he said bad things about management and even told everyone how much one boss made. He was fired on June 25, 1982. Still, it was clear what he did. Scores had tripled. This newspaper called him the city's best DJ. Some people said he told a mean joke about a plane crash while he was in the air, but Howard denied that. No one ever said anything bad about it. He told them that he had a $35,000 deal to make a comedy record with Fred Norris before starting his job at WNBC. It was first called 50 Ways to Rank Your Mom. It came out again in 1994 with a new name, Unclean Beaver. But just as he was getting ready for his big break in New York, trouble showed up.
control all the time, and an abrupt end. A TV report criticized Howard's shock radio style 4 months before he started working at WNBC. Some very important people at NBC were scared when they saw it in NBC magazine. They thought about getting out of his contract before it even began, but they chose to control him instead of paying him off. There were a lot of rules. At first, Howard couldn't bring his old team. That made things bad with Robin Quivers. In the end, she joined him. But it wasn't easy to begin with. His show began on August 30th, 1982, in the afternoon. He was told what not to talk about right away: no religion and no sex. He was kicked off the show for a sketch called Virgin Mary Kong, in which men chased the Virgin Mary in a video game. They even hired a lawyer to sit in and add a 7-second delay if they had to. Kevin Metheny, who was in charge of the show, later got that job. Howard didn't like him and called him pig virus on the radio. Howard's fame grew despite all the rules. He even got into a famous fight with morning show host Don Imus on TV. Howard got a new agent in 1984. His name is Don Buchwald. He signed a new 3-year deal with WNBC that same year. At this point, he was on Late Night with David Letterman and in People magazine. That got attention across the country. He even played a crazy news host in a short movie called Writer P.I. for $1,000. As of May 1985, he had the highest viewing share of any afternoon show on WNBC in 4 years, with 5.7% of the TV audience. He was very hot. It didn't matter though. Howard and Robin were both fired on September 30, 1985, just before he was set to go live. Management said it was because of different ideas. One boss said there were things we wanted him to change when asked what that meant. Howard never learned for sure who made the call. After many years, he thought it was because a high-level official at RCA, the company that owns WNBC, heard one of his more extreme bits. The name of it was Bestiality Dial a Date. After only 10 days he was free. Howard's dream of living in New York had ended in an instant, but his trip wasn't over yet. From being fired as a DJ to being king of the radio, Howard Stern didn't give up after being fired from WNBC in 1985. In spite of NBC's $50,000 job offer, he didn't rush to Los Angeles to find a new job. He stayed in New York. His goal was to humiliate NBC. Stern told the press in October 1985 that he had signed a new 5-year deal with Infinity Broadcasting. The deal was worth $500,000. It gave him a spot on the New York rock station WXRK. In November, he began hosting afternoons, but by February 1986, he was back in the morning spot and ready to compete with WNBC and Imus. After only a few months, his show started making the rounds. Philly was the first place besides New York to air his show. After that, things really took off. From 1994 to 2001, Stern's radio show had the most listeners of any morning show in New York. The show was seen by about 20 million people in 60 areas across North America at its peak. Stern did more than just radio. He also brought his crazy energy to TV. In the late 1980s, Fox asked him to make The Late Show without Joan Rivers. Stern taped 5 pilot episodes that last an hour each. He even got a band leader and a comic to come, but Fox turned down the show. A business leader said it was dull and rude. Howard wasn't stopped. Howard Stern's Neglia and Underpants Party was a pay-per-view event he put on in 1988. It made $1.2 million and was bought by 60,000 houses. After Howard joked that drugs were being used backstage, the Drug Enforcement Administration paid attention to the event. However, no real case was made. The U.S. Open Source live event in 1989 sold out Nassau Coliseum in just 4 hours. Stern and his producer Gary Debate played tennis on the show. Stern later put it on video because fans loved it so much. As early as 1990, Rolling Stone said Stern would become a big name in many media. He signed another 5-year radio deal worth more than $10 million that same year. He also started a TV show on WWR-TV on Saturday nights. It had his radio team on it and was a big surprise hit. It even did better than Saturday Night Live when the two shows were on at the same time. It was over after 69 shows in 19, but being famous cost them something. Stern's show got several fines from the FCC for having inappropriate content. In 1991, he made a protest CD called Crucified by the FCC that had parts that were cut out. Stern began calling himself the king of all media around this time. At first it was a joke, a fun dig at Michael Jackson, who was known as the king of pop, but soon enough it felt real. Stern was the first person to have the #1 morning show in both New York and Los Angeles at the same time. We saw this in 1992. That same year, he also put out another home video called Bongo Fiesta. Stern said that the main act was a frantic spanking set to a rock record. It did really well, selling over 260,000 copies and making over $10 million. Stern went back to TV in 1992 with The Howard Stern Interview, an E! Network show that aired once a week. It was a year long. He went to the MTV Video Music Awards that same year as a made-up superhero named Fartman. He was dressed in a way that showed off his behind. The idea for the character came from National Lampoon, and Stern used it in
In late 1992, people started making plans to make a Fartman movie. Stern agreed with New Line Cinema that things could go forward. It was planned that J.F. Lowton would write and direct the film. The cost ranged from $8 million to $11 million. Lowton said it would be a funny movie with a good plot. But by 1993 the movie was no longer being made. Stern and the company couldn't agree on how to handle the rights or how far they could take the story. Stern didn't slow down though. In 1993 he was in talks with Fox again to take over Chevy Chase's failed late-night show. Stern's agent came up with a new plan that same year. Stern could fix his image and show he still had power with a book deal since the movie didn't do well. Stern agreed to write secret parts for Seaman and Schuster for $1 million. It was something he worked on with writer Larry Ratso-Sloman and editor Judith Reagan over the summer. He told me that writing the book was the hardest thing I had ever done in my own life. Private Parts was a huge hit when it came out on October 7th. The first 225,000 books were gone in hours. Over 1 million copies were sold in just 2 weeks. It stayed at the top of the New York Times bestseller list for 20 weeks. A lot of people came to book events. About 10,000 people went to the one in New York. Stern had finally done what he planned all along. He was no longer just a voice on the radio. He was well known in TV, books, and other places. Howard Stern's name was all over the place by the mid-1980s. His radio show was getting big quickly. Stern made sure that people didn't forget about him even when he went to more cities because of national syndication. He was loud, crazy, and didn't hold back. That was not okay with the Federal Communications Commission. These people find stations that pay millions of dollars for what they call decent content. Stern's talk with Rick Salomon, who was in the news with Paris Hilton, was a big deal. Howard didn't give up though. To Rolling Stone he once said, "I was crazy about the ratings, I wanted to stay at the top." He didn't just want to play music, he wanted people to pay attention to him. He became famous because of that drive, but it hurt his personal life. This was the reason he lost his first marriage. Later he said, "I was totally neurotic and kind of consumed with work." At that point things began to change. What love, family, and divorce are. Howard met Allison Burns at Boston University, where he was still a student. He put her in a student film after meeting her through a friend. "It only took us a week to decide that we were going to marry each other," he wrote afterward. They got married when they were 24 years old in 1978. They had 3 daughters, Emily, Deborah, and Ashley. Howard said Allison was the love of his life a lot of the time. She played a big role in both his first book, Private Parts, and the movie that was based on it. But the truth was harder to see behind the scenes. In a review, Roger Albert once asked, "How much will this woman put up with before she dumps him?" They broke up in 1999. In 2001 they got a divorce. Howard later told The Hollywood Reporter, "I lived in a silly world. I believed I was the best parent. I had no idea that everything around me was falling apart." He thought his family life was great, but he now says he didn't really know what it meant to be an adult with a family. He said, "I was a child." Howard left their home in Old Westbury and moved into a fancy apartment in Manhattan after they broke up. After that he bought a house on Long Island in Southampton, New York. Howard dated a few famous people after his split, such as Angie Everhart and Robin Given. He also began going to therapy and thinking more deeply about himself. Then in 2000 he met model and TV host Beth Ostrowski. This time things were different. On Valentine's Day 2007 he told them he was going to marry her live on his radio show. They got married at Lasser, a well-known New York City restaurant, in 2000. Mark Consuelos, an actor, was the pastor of the wedding. Howard bought a huge house in Palm Beach, Florida for $52 million at the end of 2000. He's changed a lot since he first started working in radio. He's not as mean now. "I thought to myself, man, I can't please the audience." He told Rolling Stone, "The only thing I've learned is I have to please myself." He no longer reads Private Parts because he thinks that version of himself was selfish. He is now proud of being a better husband and father. By the way, Howard is not only emotionally different, his body has also changed. Health scares and getting better. His obsessive-compulsive problem began in college, and he has been very open about it. He's been to therapy over the years and says that meditation has helped him. Transcendental meditation is something he learned from his parents. He says it even helped his depressed mother get better. In the 1990s, Howard got rhinoplasty and liposuction under his chin to make himself look better. In order to improve his health, he became a pescatarian in 2012. After that, in 2019, he gave a big scare. He had a growth on his kidney that doctors found. It turned out to be a cyst that wasn't dangerous, but the fear was real. Besides taking care of his own health, Howard has also become a strong supporter of animal safety. He and Beth do a lot of work for the North Shore Animal League America. At their home on Long Island, they've been taking in cats since 2014.